How do you become a rich dentist? I'm Travis Hornsby with StudentLoanPlanner.com. Here's a couple things that I've learned after speaking to over 400 dentists on what it takes to become a multimillionaire dentist instead of a dentist who's just scraping by, turns around and they're 45 and suddenly they wonder, how the heck do I only have $100,000 of net worth to my name, despite busting your tail and working crazy hours. So being a rich dentist is not as easy as it used to be. If you follow these 7 steps, you'll be on the path to success. Step 1, fix your cash flow. So many dentists that I speak with have a big problem with being addicted to fancy toys. We're talking cars, houses, vacations, things that cost a lot of money. And a lot of times they finance those things. Well, here's the thing. A 1% car loan is a bad decision. Unless you own your practice and you have lots of net worth and you could pay cash for that vehicle if you wanted to very easily, then buying a car basically puts you in a position where you're hamstringing yourself from being successful for buying a practice in the first place or having adequate capital to reinvest within your business and potentially even grow your little mini dental empire. So that's something that people really mess up their finances with. So if you do not have $10,000 in the bank, you need to get there tomorrow. Focus everything on getting $10,000 in the bank with no consumer debt. So no credit card debt, no personal loans, none of that. At the very minimum, you can have a little bit of car loan and maybe some home equity debt, but really you want to have as little as possible. You want to have as much cash as you can, preferably 3% of the purchase price of whatever practice that you could be interested in buying one day. So fix your cash flow, have a budget, know what you're spending, have way more that's coming in than's going out, and as long as you're in that kind of a situation, you'll be in good shape. Step 2, stereotypes are dangerous. So the cultural expectation of a dentist is that you're going to go wear super nice clothes, you're going to drive fancy cars, right? Maybe you're going to have pretty, lavish lifestyle. That is what people expect of a dentist. They go to the dental office and they're kind of expecting the dentist to be parked up front with a Porsche, right? And that's kind of a lot of people's view of dentistry that don't understand how expensive it is to go to dental school and how in some markets saturation is really pushing down the incomes of dentists because insurance companies have more power than the dentists do, so they can just say, hey, I'm a Delta Dental, I'm just going to pay you this, and you just have to say yes, because if you don't, somebody down the street will, and you'll lose your patients. So the cultural stereotype of a dentist being this wealthy dentist, well, first, keep in mind that it's not about what you spend, it's about what you save. So if you want to be a rich dentist one day, you kind of have to fight back against this cultural stereotype. You almost have to surprise people by going against the cultural norms of what a dentist is supposed to be. So instead of driving a Porsche, maybe you're driving a Toyota, like a Camry or something like that. That's maybe 5 years old with 100,000 miles on it. Instead of living in a $500,000 house, maybe you're living in the same kind of a house that a teacher would live in. And this is not to say that you have to do this forever, but if you make these sacrifices early on in your career when you're really young and you have a lot of years for interest to compound, you could be really amazed by the kind of impact that you could have in your life by making these decisions. Step 3 is to get a plan that actually fulfills your career goals with your student loan debt. This is what we specialize in. If you have questions on how to get a plan for your dental school debt, if it's over $100,000, you can reach out to help@StudentLoanPlanner.com. The most important thing is that your student loan plan does not impact negatively your goals you have in your life. If you want to work 3 days a week, there's nothing wrong with that. But why would you necessarily have everything set up for an aggressive refinancing schedule when you could potentially go for loan forgiveness, save for the tax bomb, and have a lower cash flow coming out of your pocket? If you want to have an empire and you want to build a giant group of dental practices that you're running with associates or something like that, why would you be focused on paying down so much of your loan so quickly, perhaps on an inefficient repayment plan, just so that you can save a couple percent in interest when you're really risking the ability to get into a practice, which is going to be the thing that's going to get you out of debt in the first place? So what we see all the time is people will make mistakes. They won't have their student loans matching their life plans, and that's just not a good decision. That's just a classic way to cost yourself tens of thousands of dollars. Just the other day, I had somebody who wanted to eventually pay back their debt, but they were on like IBR or pay-as-you-earn instead of revised pay-as-you-earn that comes with the interest subsidy, so they were leaving $10,000 on the table that they didn't need to be. and that's just not smart, right? Wasting money is not a good way to get rich. Step 4, don't forget about retirement savings. Retirement savings for 2019, you can put away $19,000 as an employee into a 401k plan. So few dentists actually do this. There's other things that seem to take precedence over that, and that's just not smart. So if you want to be a wealthy dentist one day, then you really need to focus on getting a lot of money into your retirement accounts, and also take advantage of employer matching. If you own your own practice, set up a 401k and suck it up and start doing a 401k match. A lot of dentists just have a very short-sighted view of things, and they decide that a 401k match is just an expense, so they're not going to do it. Well, guess what? That affects you too. You can't do a match for yourself if you're not doing one for your employees. So that's not a smart thing to do. You can even add your spouse on to your dental practice in a lot of cases so that they can do a 401k match as well. So if two dentists did $19,000 a year, which is the new limit for 2019, and they only did $19,000 a year, and they did it for 25 years with a 7% return, that's like $2.6 million. So if you want to become a rich dentist, you got to get serious about your retirement savings. Step 5 is to own your own dental practice. So many dentists that I speak with live in fear. They're afraid of what will happen if they leave the safety of their associate job with a regular, predictable income and they go start their own office, or they acquire someone else's practice, or they even partner with somebody in a partnership and take on shared risk that way. If you want to make the most of your career in dentistry from a financial perspective, you need to be a practice owner. It's the unfortunate reality that being an associate is not a good way to get a big return on your investment of 4 years of education plus residencies if you did that, plus the massive amount of debt that you graduate with. The dental profession is one of the few healthcare professions out there where people can still get massive returns on their educational investment as practice owners. Most people in healthcare professions are being transitioned into giant healthcare systems where it's very difficult to go out and do private practice because of all the regulation and the compliance concerns and just the unfriendly environment to independent practitioners that's happening these days. But for dentistry, the independent solo practice owner still rules. And that's something that I think is really valuable and something that's worth fighting for and maintaining. So if you want to be a private practice owner, the first thing you have to realize is your chance of failure is only like 0.3%. Talk to some bankers. They tell me that 3 in 1,000 practice loans fail. Of those 3 in 1,000, 2 of those 3 were because of substance abuse, alcohol, drugs, things like that. Furthermore, apparently, usually that substance abuse is happening with male dentists. So if you're a female dentist, you should go and start your own practice because it's almost certain that you're going to be successful. Dental practices that are not successful apparently tend to be cosmetic dentistry practices and startups. Startups that don't have a clear plan, don't have a clear path to making revenue, that kind of thing. So if you acquire someone else's practice, you have a very high chance of success. Compare somebody who's a practice owner to somebody who's an associate. A practice owner might be making 40% of the revenue and compensation with 60% overhead, or they might be even making more than that if their overhead's like 50 or 55%. A associate is going to make between 28% and 33% of collections on average. So if you want to be an owner, you're going to be getting maybe a much higher compensation. And also on top of that, the practice that you would have as an owner, you're going to have to finance it. If you don't have capital to put in yourself, you're going to have to go to a bank and get a practice loan. So you get that practice loan over 10 years, that practice loan is getting paid off. When that practice loan is paid off, you now own a practice, which is worth something, right? So say you pay $700,000 for a practice and you pay it off for $1 million practice, let's say, and let's say that you're eventually paying that off over time. At the end of that 10 years, you now own this dental practice that you paid $700,000 for. It might be worth, say, $1 million, maybe $900,000, $1.1 million, something like that. The value probably went up because the cost of the procedures that the practice is doing probably went up, so there's higher revenue, right, because of inflation at the very least. So your dental practice is actually worth something. Ideally, 6 figures or 7 figures, low 7 figures is what it could be worth if you really work hard. So that 6 or 7 figure practice is something that you could sell. So practice ownership is very important. Many people wait far too long to close on their own dental practice, and they shouldn't do that. They do so at their own risk. Step 6, get a good return on investing. So many dentists take $100,000 and just let it sit in cash. That's not a good idea, at least for the long term. Now, the markets can definitely go up and down, and certainly they can fall 50% or more, and you can lose tons of money on paper. That's why you need to have an investment plan. You need to have an investor policy statement where you say what your goals are and then make sure that your investments reflect those goals. So you can do that with a fee-only financial planner. There's plenty of those out there. Or you could also work with a digital investing service like a Betterment. So if you go to Betterment through our link in the comments, you'll get a month to a year free. Then you can also go to Vanguard.com and they'll help you invest as well for a very modest fee. So you want to make sure that you have investments in bond and stock mutual funds instead of just in the bank. Because if you put it only in the bank, you're only going to get 1 or 2% on your money. When you put it in to a Vanguard kind of an investment, you could get maybe 3% in a bond fund long term and maybe 5 to 7% on a stock mutual fund. Maybe more, but certainly that will really add up with compound interest over time. So you need to be putting a lot of your earnings that you're not spending on expanding your practice and reinvesting in your business, and that you're not putting into retirement. You need to open up a brokerage account and put that money in that kind of an account as well. Finally, step 7 to becoming a rich dentist. Be on the same page with your spouse about money. So many dentists make so many mistakes because they are not talking to their spouse about what they want in life financially. So maybe you're a saver that married a spender or vice versa, or maybe you're both savers or both spenders. Regardless, you want to make sure that when someone hears that you did $5,000 of procedures, that they know that that's not net profit, right? That means maybe you made $1,000 or $2,000 of net profit. So one common expression that I've heard for both male and female dentists is if my husband or if my wife finds out that there's money in the account, they're going to spend it, okay? And if that's the case, then you need to go talk to a marriage counselor or maybe a financial planner or somebody to make sure that there's not resentment and frustration that's happening in your marriage so that you're both paddling the same direction in life. So if you do these 7 steps, you're going to be a very wealthy dentist. And if you want our help in making sure that your student loans don't get in the way of you becoming a rich dentist, reach out to help@studentloanplanner.com. We'd love to help you.